Okay, and so all markets, including the labor market, are made up of buyers and sellers, right? In the market, the buyers, and hence the demand curve, are the employers, and the sellers, and therefore the supply curve, are the workers, right? And this makes sense, as the employers are the ones who buy labor, right, and from the workers, who in turn sell their labor to the employers. Okay, the trade-off that the workers make is between one of work versus leisure, right? Now, when economists talk about leisure, right, we're not talking about sitting down by the pool sipping soda or anything like that, right? We're simply describing all non-work as leisure. Okay. Now, there's some problems with that definition, but we that's the simplification that economists make. If we went into too much detail, we'd get bogged down. We'd miss the opportunity to actually analyze anything. So fundamentally, you're either working or you're leisuring. Okay. And so, like all markets, there can be distortions from this simple analysis, right? There can be labor unions or legal requirements that affect labor supply and labor demand, or even both, right? And we'll go into these sort of as the semester goes on, okay? And what's more, each individual market is going to have its own labor market. So in Big Rapids, there's a labor market for servers at restaurants and a labor market for stocking the shelves at grocery stores, right? And so, whenever we're talking about the labor market, we need to be specific. Okay, we need to say we're talking about the labor market for restaurant workers, for golf professionals, for tennis professionals, for anything that we're talking about. We need to be specific. We're talking about this market, not an overall market, this market. Okay, and so we can analyze all kinds of things like that. Okay. Now, economists are also concerned with general trends in labor, and for this, we have sort of a few definitions. We have a population, which is basically the people over the age of 16 within a country. Okay, so the population is, generally speaking, just the people who are 16 and older, and the reason why we choose 16 is because that's when most people typically start working. Okay, there are obviously some examples of people working at 12, 14, etc., and there are other people who don't start working until their 20s. Okay, but 16 seems to be a pretty decent number to start with, and so we start there. In the U.S., this number is approximately 245 million. Okay. The second thing we concern ourselves with is what we call the labor force. Okay, this is people over 16 who are either working or currently looking for work. Okay. Essentially, we're talking about people who are employed and people who are not employed but want to work and are trying to make that happen. Okay. In the U.S., this is approximately 155 million people. Okay. We're also, speaking of employed, we consider those people separately as well. These are people over 16 who are currently working. Okay, and this is roughly 144 million people in the U.S. And there are unemployed people, which you can calculate by taking the labor force minus the number of employed people, and this is equal to 11 million. right? 155 minus 144. Leading scholars contend that is 11. Okay, these are people that are currently not working for pay, but are either looking for a job or expecting to be recalled from layoff in the near future. Okay, so an unemployed person is not just anyone who isn't working. They have to be either looking for work or expecting to come back to work very quickly. Okay, but what this means, if you think about what this means, we can see that there must be 90 million people that are in the population that are over the age of 16 that are not working and are not looking for work. Right, so these are people that are not in the labor force. They don't count as unemployed. Okay, and that becomes very important in about 2 seconds. Okay, so within this group of people not in labor force, right, which is approximately 90 million. We have people who are retired, right? So these are people who retired, right? They're not looking for work because they've already worked, right? They've reached their golden years, and they're done. They're not working anymore. Okay, so they're voluntarily not working. And these are the other subset would be just what we call discouraged workers. Right, and discouraged workers are people who have given up looking. So they're unemployed people who have given up looking for work. Right, and so an important thing to note is that a discouraged worker is someone who is not retired, but they're also not in the labor force, right? And as a result, they don't count as unemployed, right? They're not even measured, right? They're just there, right? These people can be all kinds of things. So most people your age are probably not looking for work right now because you're in school, right? And so it's not a bad thing to not count high school kids or college students who are not looking for work as it's not a bad thing to ignore them from the unemployed, right? It'd be false to say like, oh, they're not working, so they must be unemployed. It's like, well, that's true, but is that a problem in society? Well, no, right? It's a good thing to be, studying, okay? So we don't count those people, okay? And so people not in the labor force can be there for legitimate reasons or somewhat illegitimate reasons, I guess you could call it, right? Discouraged workers are people that are out of the labor force for the wrong reasons, right? They've quit, they've given up, okay? Now, we also have what we call the labor force participation rate. Right? And this is simply the percentage of the population that is in the labor force, right? So percent population in labor force, right? Which means it's just labor force divided by population.